Hey guys, this is VideoFort Charlie back with another Premiere tutorial for you guys. In this lesson we're going to be going over in more detail how to make your edits in Premiere. Now that you know the basics on how to set your in and out points as well as how to work in the source monitor, we'll go over how to actually make your edits. A couple helpful buttons to add are the play in to out button and the loop button, so let's go ahead and do that. To add more buttons to this little toolbar down here, you can just go ahead and click on the plus on either the program or the source monitor, depending on where you want them. I generally like to put them over here in the program monitor. You click on the plus, it's going to give you this button editor option right here. So you can basically just drag whatever buttons you want down into the actual panel down here itself. So I'm going to grab the loop function here, drag it over on the end. And maybe I want to add a little separator, so there's a little space separator here. You can see that I can kind of just customize that layout. And then there's the play video into out button here that I'm going to add as well. Click OK. And now you see that those have been added to the toolbar at the bottom. Now I'm going to go ahead and do that same thing over here on the source monitor just so I have it available. Now that they're all there, click OK. And now I have my toolbar on both sides. Now the loop button will loop any playback just like it says. So if I wanted to say set an in and out, let's say I just want to loop this one section here. So I'm going to hit I for my in, and go to this section here and hit O for my out. Now I just want to play this section over and over because maybe I'm doing some audio editing or maybe I'm doing some color, whatever. All I would have to do is just click on loop. Now you see that it's turned blue because it's selected. And then when I hit space, it's just going to play that section over and over again until I tell it to stop. Now maybe I don't want it to keep looping. Maybe I only want it to play from the in point to the out point. That's where the play in to out button comes into play. Now this can be especially handy for when you're working in the source panel over here, because let's say I'm trying to figure out what in and out point I want to set. I can just see how it plays in the source monitor before actually putting it into the timeline itself. And once I like it, I can go ahead and drag and drop it in like we had done before. Now a couple of relatable shortcuts that are good to know is the go to in and go to out shortcuts. Now those are essentially just Shift I for go to in, or Shift O for go to out. So this will allow you to very precisely set your in and out points. You can do that both in the source monitor as well as the program monitor. And the program monitor will obviously reflect over here in the timeline. Now let's go over the types of edits you can make in Premiere. We kind of touched upon this in the last tutorial, but I want to get a little more in detail with it so you guys know specifically what kind of edits to make when you're doing your cuts. So in Premiere there are two kinds of edits. There's the insert edit and the overwrite edit. The insert edit will add the source monitor clip into the timeline and move all the other clips over in the timeline so that it fits in the clip. So before we go into that, I'm just going to go ahead and change back to list view and just open up only the footage bin so I have all my footage here. So let's say I just want to add this shot of the sunset that we haven't added yet. And I want to insert it right where I have this in and out. Now, here's kind of a cool technique to know. I only want it for this duration, and I've already set this duration in my timeline. Now, I don't need to go over here and set my in and out point and try to match this amount of time. Instead, I'm going to go ahead and clear my in and out point, and I'm just going to mark my in point. Let's just say right here. And I'll just let the out point expand all the way to the end of the clip. Now, if I want to go ahead and insert this clip at the beginning of this in point and have it extend to the out point here, I would go ahead and hit the comma key, which is a shortcut for insert edit. And now you see that this sunset has been added to the timeline. And everything else after that has been scooted over to accommodate that. Perfect. Now the other edit is the overwrite edit, which will, as its name implies, overwrite when it adds to your clipped in timeline. If there's nothing on your timeline, then it will overwrite nothing. If there is a clip already in the same space as where you're inserting the new clip, it'll overwrite that clip. Now I usually like to use the overwrite edit over the insert edit, just so that way things don't get scooted around or too wacky on the timeline. But you do have to be careful because you might accidentally overwrite a clip that you want to keep in the timeline. This is where the source selection as well as the track selection becomes essential. So let's say that I wanted to, instead of inserting this sunset, I wanted to overwrite it over these two clips. Well, I can do that same method. I've selected my in and outs on my timeline. I just mark an endpoint here on the sunset. And I want it to go above these two clips. So that way I can keep these here on the timeline in case I need them later, but I can also just see what it looks like with the sunset. I'm going to have my source overwrite on track V2 as well as track A2. And I'm going to hit period. And that's the hotkey for overwrite edit. Now you've seen the clip is overwritten this section here. Now another important point to make is that it's usually better to use the overwrite edit simply so you don't add more video to your total runtime. Now by default, Premiere is going to add the video and the audio of the clip onto your timeline. But as we had covered before, you can go ahead and deselect the source audio and deselect source video as you need to in order to just bring in what you need. So let's say I undo that overwrite edit and I only want the video, I don't want the audio. I could just be sure to deselect the audio source right there, hit overwrite edit by hitting period, and now only the video is going to go in. So now let's go ahead and get into trimming clips. Now you have these clips inserted into your timeline. You can move them around. You already have the snap selection, so you can move them around to where you need to. You can pop them up on track 1 or track 2, however you need to. But let's say I want to make this one a little shorter, so I want to trim it down. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in a little bit. And that's actually pretty simple. All you have to do is just really drag over to the edge of the clip, and you'll see that the icon changes from the arrow to trim tool. You just go ahead and scoot it over to where you need to. And now you've trimmed the clip. Now the issue with this is that as you trim clips, you see that spaces appear. Now you can go in and just simply select the space and hit delete, and that'll remove the space. Just like if you were to select a clip and hit delete, that would remove the clip. So there's a couple other ways to go about this. There is the rolling edit or the ripple edit. Now the ripple edit will just shorten whatever clip you're working on, not affecting any other clip. And I can do this by holding Command, going to the edge. You see that now that it is a yellow icon, which is the ripple edit icon. And I can scoot it over to where I want to cut it. And now you see that all the other clips, they just move over to that point. But let's say I want to do a rolling edit. Now a rolling edit is a type of trim that pushes the whole edit point left or right. To perform the rolling edit, all you have to do is just hold down Command and drag when the double arrows appear. Now what this does is essentially just rolls over the clip in either direction. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take away from the clip on the right and I'm going to add to the clip on the left. This way I'm not creating any gaps, I'm not extending the timeline itself. All I'm doing is just taking from one, adding to another. So that's a rolling edit. However, when working in a sequence, it's a good idea to keep as much of your timeline intact while making edits. That's why I recommend using the basic trim tools and overwrite tools, at least for now. If you have gaps, you can go ahead and delete them. When you get a little more adventurous, or if you can manage navigating the timeline a little bit more, I would go ahead and start using the ripple edit as well as the roll edit to start making some changes. Now another good tip that we've kind of touched upon is adding new clips to different tracks. This way you can keep whatever you have in your timeline, but you can try experimenting with different things. So let's say I wanted to try adding this sunset over this clip of the pigeons. So I'm just going to drag this over the pigeons clip. I'm going to go ahead and trim it so that it's the same length. And now Premiere is just going to show me whatever clip is the highest up on the video track. Now, if I don't want to see the sunset, instead of deleting it, I could always just hit the little eyeball tool here. And now it's going to hide it so I can see the pigeons. So I can see, here's the cut with the pigeons. If I deselect this, so now that I can see the sunset, here's the cut with the sunset. So it's a good way that you can just A/B your edits and experiment with what looks best without actually having to destroy anything in your timeline. Non-destructive workflows are always the best workflows in my opinion. So now that pretty much covers all the different kinds of edits that you would need. At this point, I would have to say, just grab some clips, find some stock clips online, just start importing them, putting them together, play around with the trim tools, play around with the different kinds of, deleting, editing, all the different hotkeys that we had talked about. You can move the clips around whatever manner you'd like, just to get familiar with cutting an actual piece together. Once you feel comfortable, you can start working on some of the more detailed elements such as timing and all of that. Making sure that all these shots make sense and really getting into what it means to actually make a good edit. So that about covers our introduction to Premiere editing section. Next up, we're going to be going over setting up your sequence and some of the more advanced settings that you can do when setting up that sequence. But for now, this is VideoFort Charlie signing off. I will see you next time.